Milano, the Duelist. Yep, that works right there.
All right, good luck, have fun.
Yeah, that seems about right. Yo, what's up, boys and girls? It's your boy Swolelax here, and I'm back at it again with a video. This time something different. Today, let's talk about combo decks inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, I know what you must be thinking right off the bat, Swolelax. What a nice shirt, you look so handsome. Oh, the Swolelax Optimal collab shirt that I have on right here that you guys can check out, the links in the description down below. This old thing, I didn't even notice that I had this thing on. Excuse me. Anyways, so combo decks inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Are in an interesting place inside of the meta. If you guys don't know, that generally inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! There's like 3 different types of decks. And this goes for most card games as well, but for Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically, you can kind of break it down into these 3 categories. There's control decks, which offer like a slower style of play with a lot of trap cards, maybe a little bit of monster effects that help you gain advantage over time and help slow roll and steamroll your opponent. There's also a bunch of mid-range decks, which are like a combination between control and combo. They have explosive moments when they need to. However, for the most part, they do tend to play it pretty safe. They, again, do really well during the mid-game, the mid-range deck. These decks can really capitalize on mistakes made by your opponent, but also can get equally punished themselves. And lastly, we have the combo decks, which are pretty much exactly what they sound like. Like, combo decks are simultaneously a very cool concept inside of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, but also like a ginormous joke. Like, when people think about old school versus new school Yu-Gi-Oh!, generally speaking, these are the types of decks that scare older school players or people who just casually play the game and they're like, why are you summoning your entire deck or graveyard? Whoa. And while I think some of those videos and jokes and memes are a little bit dumb in the first place, they come from a place of truth, which is that combo decks are kind of crazy. Now, by the title and thumbnail of this video, you could probably assume that I'm a control player. I'm a dirty mid-range or control player.
I like to do nothing but flip floodgates and let no one have fun.
And I like to say to the contrary, no, I actually really love combo decks. Combo decks are almost my bread and butter. Back in the day, you guys know I had a little show called Combo Kitchen where I would showcase different combos. But I love combo decks. I think they're really cool. A lot of them have a lot of really neat lore and backstory. The combos that they do produce are actually really fun and also kind of interesting. And on top of that too, you find this really interesting dynamic with Konami whenever they create card artwork. Typically speaking, whenever you have a combo deck, the card artwork tends to be a lot more exciting, a lot more energetic. The different archetypes and the different ways the archetype interacts is a lot more mobile, if you will. Whereas decks that feel a little slower or a little more subdued typically have artwork that are just a little more chill, or they don't really have a lot going on. Sometimes they're more the simple artworks. But outside of that, you guys know that I love heroes, I love Salamangreat, I love Cyber Dragons. I played Zodiac recently with Zeus. I've played dinosaurs. Recently, I've been loving Code Talkers. And I even played Gokis twice, once back in 2018 when they could do all these crazy stuff, and once recently when they could still do all the crazy stuff with Dragoon and Isolde and the new Phantom Knights cards and all these other things. Like, I like combo decks a lot. However, no matter how cool or how great the artwork or anything else with combo decks, they're pretty unga bunga. Like, brain dead to describe a strategy card game in general probably isn't the best way to put it. So unga bunga is the better choice, but essentially, whatever you want to call it, combo decks are very basic, and you might have been yelling at the screen right now saying like, Swolelax, not all combo decks are unga bunga. Hashtag not all decks. I hate to break it to you, yes, all combo decks are unga bunga. To start, all combo decks want to do like one thing, and it's disgusting. Normally these decks have like 3, 2, and sometimes 1 card starters that end them on these gigantic boards. Sometimes, and more recently, the combos are much more involved. They carry a lot of different card types. They have to have specific sequencings for you to get the specific combo. And today you might say, that's not unga bunga, but really that's not that hard. Of course, that's just archetype and that's just deck building in itself. And why would I not tell you to play optimally here, right? Like, it's kind of dumb for me to say you should misplay on purpose, because the deck is able to do what it's able to do with how unfair or how involved or whatever. I'm not telling you to misplay. It's optimal to play the deck this way because the deck can do this unfair or really insane combo. But just don't be surprised when people are like, oh, this is really unfair. Well, in some cases, you don't always do that one thing. Don't act like whenever that one thing happens, it's like the most difficult thing to do in the entire world. My general combo deck ruling for how I label them or rank them as Unga Bunga kind of goes as follows. In the more forgiving category of combo decks, if you have things like 3-card starters, this is a little bit less Unga Bunga. You probably have a very optimal combo you like to perform, one that you revisit pretty often that generally requires these 3 cards or a combination to get you to these 3 cards or something like that. 3 cards is a pretty big ask from a combo deck or from most decks in the first place to perform their optimal way to play. So less Unga Bunga, but again, combo deck, so Unga Bunga. And then for the second tier, we have 2-card combos. Essentially, if you're 3 and above, you are less Unga Bunga than the 2 and below category. 2-card combos is typically where we start to get into the like, this is getting really absurd. You drawn 5 cards for your opening turn, sometimes 6 if you're going second. And that means you have 3 cards to do whatever you want with. And then those 2 cards specifically, that could be part of the 5 or the 6 cards you have total. These 2 cards get you there, and these 3 cards could be interruptions to make sure you get there, or they could be things to ensure your victory. So for example, let's say you're going first and you have 5 cards in your opening hand. 2 of those cards are your combo starters. 1, 2, 3 cards that could be literally anything. You could have 3 Solemn Strikes, you could have a Hand Trap, a Solemn Strike, and a Biru, a Dark Ruler or more. You could have like a Cosmic Cyclone. You could have a lot of things inside of this opening hand that prevent your opponent from outing your board, which I understand is the point of these combo decks. You want to establish your board and keep your board, typically winning on like turn 2. So Unga Bunga. And then finally, we have the 1-card combos. We have 1 card gets you to insane value. When 1 card specifically, or not 1 card specifically, it could just be a pool of cards inside of your deck that gets you to your main combos. The 1-card starter decks are probably the most egregious offenders of being Unga Bunga. Typically speaking, when a deck has like a 1-card starter, that just means that when they summon, they win. If a deck has a consistent 1-card starter for their entire full combo, it's a little disheartening to see, okay, 1 card equals 20 minutes of my life wasted watching someone do a combo. And yes, I could have interruptions, I could have things to stop that, but typically these combo decks are built to be resilient to those things. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I played a lot of combo decks, so I know how ridiculous it can be when you +4 off of just 1 card. You start out with 1 or 2 cards, but you end up with an unbreakable board and 27 or 69 plus negations that win you on turn 2. Can you see why a lot of people don't like combo decks? And these decks are typically not very hard to pilot. A common argument I see is that not all players are like this. Not all players are just one-way flowchart players. They have a lot of different experiences. They know the meta. They've tailored their deck to really hone in the skill of playing this specific combo deck. And I'd argue that like 98% of players in general aren't these players. To start, it takes like 3 minutes to get down the basic flowchart of what the deck does. And if you can accomplish that, if you can play plug and play, then congratulations, you might just get your first top cut or your regional invite because you decided to play a deck that half, if not 70% of the current card pool cannot actually deal with. The other 2 to 5% of players that really hone in their skills with these decks, that experiment, that try different things, that really try to learn the deck's in and outs, weaknesses, choke points, and how to play around them. This is where you get really intriguing, very diverse, and honestly some of the best plays inside of Yu-Gi-Oh that you'll ever see. A combo deck in the right hands can be really enjoyable and really cool to see, but a combo deck in the bad hands is Unga Bunga 98% of the time. It takes little to no effort to slap cards down on a board to get the sequence right and to end on your optimal board uninterrupted. Even if you get interrupted once, maybe twice, maybe just Nibiru'd on board, a lot of players know how to get around it or play under it to where that doesn't matter in the first place. You could say that means the player percentage is higher for those who are really skilled with the deck, But again, it's not that hard. It takes little to no effort to get to know these things, like 3 to 5 minutes maximum. You're just going through the motions at that point. You're slapping down card A, card B into card C, and card C searches card D to your hand. Now, I will say that typically formats that have very heavily diverse combo decks are really fun and intriguing formats. Otherwise, though, when we get into the tier 0 category, where it's like, this is just the best deck, hands down, no debate, like why would you play any other deck? Then it gets kind of harmful to the meta, and obviously Konami addresses this on the ban list. And hitting necessary cards on the ban list, maybe taking off cards for certain control decks to help deal with these combo decks. It's a balance because you don't necessarily want to kill a deck that players really like. However, if it's not healthy for the game, then you gotta do what you gotta do. Swolelax, you sound like a control player. I don't think you actually like playing combo decks. Look, control decks aren't better. I hate to break it to you control players right now who are just like,
Yes, I do have a 5 million IQ.
Generally speaking, control decks inside of Yu-Gi-Oh! Do require more skill and more situational awareness. You can't just like roll a dice and practice your combo. There's certain strings that you can practice to make sure you get certain sequencing right. And on top of that too, it really just depends on what your opponent's playing, how they're interacting with you. Control decks are much more interactive and much less one note than a lot of combo decks. However, these decks are still pretty unga bunga. You have an insane amount of powerful floodgates inside of the game that these decks can just natively play without any care in the world. And on top of that too, they can play cards that you would use to break apart control players' boards to break apart your boards. Things like Evenly Matched, things like Lightning Storm. With the rise of counter traps like Solemn Strike, Solemn Warning, and Solemn Judgment, in addition to these floodgates like there can only be one, Goes and Match, etc. Control decks can feel just like helmet decks. Slap down a monster, you play a bunch of traps, and then boom, your opponent can't play either. In some cases, it is also easier to get to that state than if you were playing a combo deck. It's actually much less risk, some would argue. There's a reason why True Draco is one of the most hated decks of all time. So yeah, it's still pretty unga bunga. It's just a little bit less so, like maybe 30 to 40% less unga bunga. So Swolelax, are we just like effed in the A when it comes to picking decks? Are we gonna get hate no matter what deck we play? The answer is yeah. Of course you are. The thing is to play whatever makes you happy. Sometimes I want to play a really cool control deck that offers a lot of interaction between me and my opponent. Sometimes I don't, and I want to play floodgates, and I just want to play barrier statues, something like that. Other times I like turning my brain off and just clicking buttons and taking cards and summoning a bunch of dudes, linking my opponent and giving them Ibly. And other times I really like to sweat and I like to be like, man, I really want to think about what I'm doing inside of this match, and I want to be able to interact with my opponent's cards in a meaningful way. I really like Salamangreat for that reasons, and I think back in like 2018, maybe it was 2019, Salamangreats were one of my favorite decks to play because they had a lot of really cool interactions. I felt like me as a player and me personally, the playstyle really fit how I wanted to go about playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I had to actually think out a lot of my duels, and I think that the deck had tools and a kit that really complemented my playstyle and how I wanted to go about each situations. I was able to use the different tools in a different sequence. And then maybe in this duel, I had to use the cards and tools at my disposal in a different way than another duel that I played in the same exact day. As Trips Gaming once said, the game plan is very important. You want to stick to the game plan.
Put firewalls banned, baby. So am I, but like whatever.
Essentially, combo decks have always had this air about them, this conversation surrounding combo decks being player agency versus deck direction. Or as I've said in previous videos, the deck objective, or as Triff refers to it, the game plan. Does the game plan, does the deck objective meet the player needs? And how easy is it to give players agency within those decks or have the deck itself pilot the players? Is the player playing the deck? Or is the deck playing the game for the player? But I think that's all I have to say about combo decks. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about combo decks. Do you guys like combo decks? Do you guys hate combo decks? Are you somewhere in the middle where you like to play a wide range of decks? Do you agree that they're kind of unga bunga? I'd love to know your thoughts and opinion down in the comment section down below. If you guys like this video, make sure to leave it a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I got a lot more videos coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned for that if you would like to. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. Peace out.